You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. How does your subconscious shape your path, and how can you rewire it to align with your purpose? Find out more in today's episode. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore what it truly means to embody your purpose, not just as an idea, but as a lived experience. Our guest shares how shifting thoughts, beliefs, and subconscious conditioning can open the door to a more aligned and fulfilling life. Yuki Yoshii helps people live the life they truly desire by teaching them how to change their thoughts, beliefs, and subconscious conditionings using over 2 decades of his spiritual journey and by connecting the dots between the fields of spirituality, personal development, holistic health, and mindfulness. Yuki is a former professional dancer turned into a guide to help people embody awakening through the practice of self-realization. He is also a former consultant for Bob Proctor and author of Soul Purpose Insights. Yuki holds a master's degree in holistic health education, specializing in consciousness and somatic psychology. Let's meet Yuki Yoshii. Hi, Yuki. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because embodying your purpose is such an intriguing topic for today. I can't wait to dive in and get your perspective and your take on all of this. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Embodying purpose is very, very good. I feel like that's something that I've been living for my entire life. I cannot wait to share with your audience.
Sounds wonderful. I feel like possibly a lot of listeners have not been embodying their purpose. So this is going to be a really important thing to talk about. Would you like to start us off maybe with a little bit about yourself and your own journey and how that connects to what you do today, and let our listeners know what it is that you do today?
Yeah, amazing questions. I can talk about this very long time, but let me just make it a little bit shorter for the purpose of this podcast. I'm originally from Tokyo, Japan, and I grew up in South America, Peru. It's interesting that you live in Europe and I now live in the US, and then I was in Asia and in South America. I was raised by 2 artists. My mother was a piano teacher. My father was and is a photographer. He took the whole family to Peru for his passion, and he was living on purpose already. I was exposed to that. I wasn't raised by parents who were doing a corporate job at all. So then we went back to Tokyo when I was 11, and then I discovered dance. So dance was my first career. Like I started on the street, my friend invited me, and then from there, of course, the friend who invited me stopped doing. I kept going, and I went to dance studio, and an opportunity came, and next moment I was actually earning money through dance, teaching and performing. About the same time, which was about 16, 17 years old, I dove into the realm of spirituality and things like transpersonal psychology. Consciousness, mind, body was something that I was so intrigued by it. I always knew that there was an invisible realm. So that environment that I was raised, changing 2 different continents, and then not being told to do anything, but only to do whatever that is that you want to do by parents, didn't provide me any box, but I had unlimited choices that environment allowed me to ask, okay, what is it that I really want to do? What is it that I'm here to do? Those are the type of questions that lead us to living your purpose instead of trying to fit into the model that exists out there that many people end up living because they think that that's the way to live. Yeah, that's my sort of like a shorter version of the first 2, 3 decades of my life. And then I moved to Los Angeles for dance and I was interested in the mind. And then I moved to the Bay Area, San Francisco to pursue master's in holistic health education. The term holistic was a key for me because I knew that everything was connected to everything else. And in a holistic field, we talk about the sum of its parts is not the same as whole. So those ideas and concept really drew me to understand what kind of world we're living, what am I actually doing, who am I, and what am I doing actually. Long story short, doing that program and being exposed to consciousness from an academic standpoint to have a solid understanding of what it is led me to actually do coaching. The school that I went trained therapist, psychotherapist, but I didn't want to be a therapist. I chose holistic health education because health was the vehicle in which I wanted to help people, because the current model of the world doesn't really have a title or specific role or what to call it. It sort of falls under the umbrella of coaching, guiding people to create the life from now on to the future instead of focusing on the past. Right now, we kind of talked about this a little bit. I don't want to limit to the labels and category, but people needs to sort of know what it is. So only because of the purpose, I tell myself that what I do is soul purpose coaching. So that's what I do.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. And wow, I can only imagine both the freedom and responsibility that comes with not growing up with any boxes. That sounds amazing. And also a possibility that you might get overwhelmed by all the choices that you have to find your purpose. So, in the end, I think that freedom would give us a direction that really would allow us to find that alignment naturally instead of through maybe a corporate burnout or some kind of breakdown that we have to go through to get there. So, that sounds really amazing. And you're quite right. This whole idea of holistic and understanding how the world works, I believe, is a huge part of why so many people are ill nowadays and are not feeling well and are not in well being and are not in holistic health. Because there are some parts missing, I think, in most of the ways that we approach health and that we approach our own life and how we find joy and alignment. So there's a lot of pieces in there that you brought up that we can unpack. I'm curious about one thing. When you work with your clients or with your customers now on this soul alignment, and you come from a background where sort of the world was your oyster and many people didn't grow up like that, how do you work with your clients that are still kind of stuck in that box and they have not had that freedom yet of coming to that point of finding their alignment? So, where do you start off in this, what could be a really overwhelming start to a journey?
Yeah, that's another amazing question. So one of the things that I always say when we do the work of coaching is everything start with the desire, because I cannot make people want what I think what they need to want. Then obviously when people are ill or sort of feeling stuck in their life is not unfolding conducive to their desire. It's not too much about me persuading the principle or perspective that I know from a holistic standpoint, but it's more around helping people become aware of their current circumstance and then what is the deep desire inside. Because we're all here, this is something that I sort of came to realize. We're all here to express and experience what we are here to do. And there's a seed of that desire that is nested within us, each and every one of us. And speaking of purpose, it's interesting because many people ask me, I don't know what my purpose is. And when people ask me that question, 100% of the time they're saying, I don't know which vehicle I can choose to express myself through. And the purpose is not that vehicle, but it's something underneath. And if you're here, actually, you're already on and with purpose. Identifying that seed is important. To answer your question, we start with the desire. However, many people have suppressed their desire based on their belief of what the world is, the belief in themselves, and also based on this repetition of many people have been conditioned to want what their parents wanted them to want or the environment wanted them to want. It's necessary to unpack little by little. This is the magic question though. If you could be, do, have anything you wanted, how would you like to be living? And when I ask that question, people start thinking about their circumstance, people start thinking about their past experience, what their parents told, what the school teachers told. And the question sort of repels all of those stories. If anything and everything is possible today, what would you choose? People need to sort of need a little bit time to unpack and peel off because not many people have lived that way from that standpoint. That's inside out living instead of outside in living.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like many people end up not feeling well because of all of that conditioning that we follow, because we're expected to finish school, study, get married, maybe have 2.5 kids, get that house with a picket fence and a dog. Don't forget the dog. And these are all of these expectations, right? That many people don't fit into those expectations and it doesn't make them happy. So coming through all of that noise and then cutting through what your desire is sounds like a really great starting point. Do you get pushback on that very often where people say, Yuki, that's easy for you to say, but my circumstance doesn't allow me to pursue my purpose because I have to work. I have to put a roof over my head. I have to think about my spouse, my kids, whoever else is dependent on them for income. How do you work with situations like that where it feels that we don't have choice over our circumstances and this is sort of not our choice to make to be happy?
That's probably where most people are stuck. There are two places that life makes people stuck. One is the circumstance. Another one is the past present pattern that they have inside of them. It's interesting that you're asking me that question. I think because of the voice that I'm expressing to the world and messages that I'm putting out there, almost every single person who comes to me are somehow familiar with the law of attraction. That's a good thing because if somebody's familiar with it, I can navigate that person to explain that, okay, we understand that universal law of cause and effect, which is the inside is the cause and the outside is an effect. If you let the outside circumstance get in the way, we're making the outside be the cause and now the inside is an effect. Then people think, I'm stuck here, right? And the reason that many people get stuck in the circumstance is because they're using the rational mind to understand how to move from point A and point B. And what I often say is that, okay, think of every single situation or consequence or circumstance that happened in your life. Has any of them been rational? Did you meet with this person? Did you know rationally how you would have encountered this person? No, every single thing that happened in our life is highly irrational. So it's irrational to try to think rationally how they can get out of that situation. One of the things that we say in the law of attraction is the how is not your business. So how things change is not our business, but when we change the subconscious vibration, because based on the quantum physics, all the probability and possibilities collapse into an event based on the energetic resonance, not based on the rational thinking. things will start shifting in a way that you're feeling, you're believing, you are emanating your energy. So the first place that we want to shift is to suspend and neutralize the circumstance and then go inside and begin creating a new reality using the imagination and sensation. It doesn't really matter what the situation is. It matters to suspend it because we don't want that to create our inside effect. So we create the inside cause using the power of choice, imagination, and possibility.
I like that. That is great because it really opens up the door for anyone, no matter their circumstance, to take advantage of these tools that we do have. And that is, like you said, this imagination. We can suspend where we are at the moment. That is fascinating. And I believe the brain can't really tell, and correct me here if I'm wrong, but I believe the brain can't really tell whether we're vividly imagining something or that has happened in reality. So we can use that to our advantage as well.
Exactly. So that's one of the characteristics of the subconscious mind. The brain, your body, your subconscious cannot differentiate the 3D, five sensory events, what you imagine to feel.
So we can imagine a whole different life where we are aligned with our purpose and our joy, and basically have those energies start permeating out into this field. And then we create this reality from the ground up, really. We're manifesting it. I like that. That's fascinating. Yeah. And does this resonate with people because they may come from a very different background where they've never maybe been able to exercise their power of imagination or their power of being allowed to follow their desire and their joy, or might even feel that they don't deserve to have a different life or joy in their lives. So these patterns, can they be unlearned? We really can learn how to manifest, how to work with this cause and effect equation, even if it's not something that we have done before.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of view because when you said that some people don't feel deserve, I think that's where so many people are stuck. I cannot stress enough that this sense of self, the worthiness that they have subconsciously, is preventing so many people from living freely. And because they have this sort of like unworthiness, that feeling is the belief that shapes their perception. And if that's creating the lens that they're seeing the world, that's what their experience becomes. So it's like a forever ending loop there. So your question is how to navigate people expand that worthiness. I believe in proximity. So let's say, for instance, I'm a good example of interesting that you mentioned about freedom because Yuki means freedom life, by the way. I shared at the beginning the example of me being raised by those parents. Therefore, I became how I operate. So the essence of how I operate was created based on the proximity that I was in. I think that's why the coaching sort of community that we create is important because the mind wants to conform with to what we are surrounded by all the time. If you are constantly with negativity, you will start feeling so. And when you start feeling long enough, you become so. So I think it's important to create and be in that environment physically, not just in imagination, but physically being surrounded by those who think that way, to live from the place of being the creator instead of being surrounded by people or circumstance that encourage being the victim of the circumstance. That would be the key. So little by little, it changes. It takes a little bit time because shifting awareness is different from weight loss. It's not like a 8 to 12 weeks stuff. I think it's a little bit longer, but the reward of that is something that you can set the tone and the course for the rest of the life. You will live a complete different purposeful life. So it worth it.
Yeah, it makes me think a little bit when you mentioned the community and things like that. I think most of us, and of course, there's going to be exceptions, but most of us are tied into some kind of network, some kind of social network, some kind of a family, a friend network, or colleagues at work. But we're tied to other people in our lives. And that could be siblings, parents, spouse, children, whatever's in your life. But it can be difficult if you're, like you said, not surrounded by a network that, for example, shares a lot of positivity or encourages you to do the things that you would like to do to generate joy or to follow your purpose. How can we work in those circumstances where our network doesn't really support us going on this journey of finding our alignment, our purpose, and our joy? Is this something that the other people in our network will also have to change? Or will it happen that if we change ourselves and we change how we put our energy out into the field, it also starts changing maybe the people that are connected to our field? So, how does that come together from a holistic perspective?
Yeah, we're talking about something very profound here. The layers of conversation. I'm gonna bring a couple of people that I admire, that I study. I'm in a like a self-personal development space slash spiritual space, and having an experience of studying the mind and holistic health. And I was very drawn to Daniel Siegel's work of interpersonal neurobiology. The reason that the proximity and community is so important is because our brain and our identity is highly plastic. Individual, the sense of self is formed through relationship. He even has a book called Intra-Connected, where for me, individual really doesn't exist, but it's intravidual always. It's interesting, like we are here, your body is in France, my body is in San Francisco, and 1+1 = 2. That's the relationship and interaction from the visible physical point of view. Psychological point of view, you're the podcast host and I'm the guest. So I have an identity that is being formed through this interaction. The relationship comes first and the intra-visual sense of self comes second. It's the other way around. And that perspective is sort of like a blind spot for a lot of people. If we can take that into our day-to-day activity, everybody is forming a sense of self based on that relationship. So a mother becomes a mother only when she has a child. All of us has an identity of being a child of the mother, but then based on the relationship. I think your question is, how does that work, right? The community and the individual, both are happening at the same time. It's like a chicken and an egg, and it's connecting and communicating. But I think what I see and witness often is we know the importance of the inner work, but the human mind, mental construct has a tendency to focus on the outside. This needs to change. If everybody thinks that something in the outside needs to change, everybody is pointing the finger outside, nothing will change. But if everybody points the finger, oh, in order for the world to change, what about if myself choose to change? And if everybody focus on the inside, everybody and everything is going to change. I think in the community, we feed off energy and the awareness and perspective. But then the one guideline that we want to have is I have the power to change my inside. And if every single person in the community has that understanding, that energy is going to change the collective and feed off the individual and the group. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And I will tell you why I asked that question, and also for our listeners, because a lot of people tell me that they're afraid to change and they're afraid to go after their joy because they're afraid that their family members or their friends won't understand that change and they will have to change friends, or they might need to get a divorce or something along those lines because the people in their network aren't changing at the same time. And by what you just explained, I think we can alleviate that fear a little bit, because when we start working on ourselves to make those changes, we inevitably affect our outer world and the other people in our network as well. Like you said, through that collective change, I think it is always worth to pursue our own joy, our own inner work, our own purpose, even if there might be a little bit of fear or hesitation that the people in our lives might not be ready for a change like that. But through that collective change and that energy that we then put out in the field, I think we can also affect change in the people whom we love, and we can model that finding our joy and our purpose. So I love how you explain that and how we are all connected on that. And I do believe that it might take away some of that fear that people have of what happens if I actually go after my purpose? What happens if I make those changes in my life? Will people still love me? Will they still be my friends? Will they still be my family who loves and respects me? So there's a big piece of that fear. What happens if we change and we make those decisions to be different? So, yeah, I love how you tied that in. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. What you just said, I feel like so many people are experiencing. If I change, that means that I need to shake off a little bit of the environment because part of my current identity is being shaped by where I'm at. It's interesting that you said that whether the people around you still are going to love you when you change. If they don't love you when you change, they are loving you conditionally. Then we want to assess what love is. Can we, who are changing, love them without that? And then things gonna change because our identity in everything that's happening in an energetic space is like a radio station. The frequency, right? If you change, the environment must change. At some point, we need to assess whether my life is worth living, my desire, and embodying the purpose. And then to be there first so you can demonstrate to impact other people around you. Or do I want to conform to the life that is not aligned with that? Only to be loved conditionally. That would be the choice that we need to make, I think.
Yeah. And like you said, I think a lot of people find themselves in exactly those situations. And that's when they can work with you and they can actually work on their alignment and their purpose and find ways to make that happen in their lives. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you work with people? And if our listeners are curious now and they want to connect with you, how can they do that and how can they work with you?
Yeah, sure. The first place that I invite people always is the school group. I have a school group called Soul Purpose School. And we talk about purpose, we talk about soul alignment, we talk about embodiment. And I found that people understand the concept of living with an own purpose. But then I found that not many people understand what they would be experiencing actually exactly when they are living that. Recently, I created a workshop called Soul Purpose Ascension Workshop that is stored in the school group that I want people to go through because then it gives people a clarity and understanding of what kind of life they would be living when they're embodying purpose. We have a very good group and we have people from all over the world. I don't think we have anybody from France though, just yet, but all over the world, Dubai, South Africa, Asia, of course. And ultimately, what I do is to help people embody. So embodiment is to begin living what we know. Because this kind of information, including podcasts, people gather information and people love reading books and YouTube videos, but the information can stay in the book, but not inside of ourselves. Embodiment is to actually learn what we know instead of learning about it. And I have a path of self-realization, which is 8 months. And we connect weekly calls and we have recorded modules. And I kind of work one-on-one using voice messages and all that. And that's a journey to support people to walk the path of self-realization. So that's the ultimate place.
That sounds wonderful. The kind of support that people get, and to really be able to come on that journey and know that they have a community and know that they have someone there with them to walk alongside. That sounds amazing. And when you talk about the embodiment also of learning about something and actually embodying it and living it in your life being two different things, right? Yeah. So that's why I also believe it's so important to work with someone who has gone on this journey and who can support you in that so that you don't get stuck again in the place that you were first stuck in. So, yeah, that sounds wonderful. And of course, I do feel that if we don't have purpose or we have never actually been allowed to explore our purpose and have never done that, it does affect us on all levels. It affects us physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, even because everything is misaligned, then does create disease in the body or illness or a burnout or stress, whatever you come up against, anxiety. Some people experience mental health challenges at that point as well. So I don't want to gloss over the importance of aligning to your purpose and aligning with your soul purpose, because I do feel that if we don't do that, there's a lot of the challenges that a lot of people are experiencing in this world today because of that reason, because they have not followed that. So I feel a big important work that you're doing, helping people align with that and providing a space for them to do that. And we, of course, will be linking to all of your offerings in the show notes as well. So our listeners can check there for how they can connect with you, how they can connect on coming on a journey with you to explore their purpose and align themselves a little bit better to affect their own health and their own well-being in a holistic kind of way. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. It's been a really interesting conversation, and thank you for indulging my curiosity. I find this such a fascinating topic. So, thank you for joining me today. I've truly appreciated your wisdom and sharing that with us.
That was so fun. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And listeners, please go check the show notes and see how you can connect with Yuki on your own journey to find purpose, alignment, and align with your soul purpose to find better health and well being for yourself. And let us know how that experience was for you. I always love connecting with our listeners. If you've worked with one of our guests, and what was your experience like? What have you found? Have you come into any transformations that you want to share? We'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. Thank you, Yuki, for coming on and sharing this time with us. Truly appreciate you. Thank you so much, and take really good care of yourself. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.